Attorney Gerald Griggs, a Justicefighter, and been hearing a lot about the previous election and how people are feeling and everything that's going on. And I don't want you to miss out on an important bill that's pending in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, and it's the First Step Act. And so you may not have heard a lot about this. I know 45 gave a press conference where he indicated that he was doing criminal justice reform, and he mentioned the First Step Act, and several major celebrities, Van Jones and a lot of others, have kind of talked about this bill a little bit and saying that it's a first step for criminal justice reform. So I wanted to break it down, bring it to your attention, and give you some information on how we move forward. So it's actually House Resolution 5682. It's pending in the U.S. Senate. It was initially introduced by Doug Collins, who is the Democrat in the 9th District. It was introduced on May the 7th, 2008 in the House Judiciary Committee, and it's been pending there. And now it's in the U.S. Senate, and it's titled an act to provide for help to reduce the risk that prisoners will recidivate upon release from prison and for other purposes. And what I want to talk to you guys about is what this bill really does. And basically, it is a prison reform act. It is to reduce recidivism. It was previously called the Formerly Incarcerated Reentry Society Transform Safety Transitioning Every Person Act, or the First Step Act. They like a lot of acronyms. But basically, it starts in Title I to start talking about recidivism reduction and risk needs assessment system and how they implement this system and readiness for the Bureau of Prisons. And then it starts, of course, removing restraints from pregnant prisoners will be prohibited under this act, and securing firearm storage in the Bureau of Prisons. But the most important part of this is the miscellaneous provisions, where it will provide for placement of prisoners close to their families, potential for home confinement for low-risk prisoners, and a prisoner reentry initiative reauthorization and modification of imposed term of imprisonment. So it's an attempt to address the issue of prison reform. It's not full-scale criminal justice reform, because it does not really deal with a lot of the mandatory minimums that need to be addressed and the communities that have been over-policed. But it is an attempt. There is some information here about de-escalation training in the prisons, evidence-based treatment for opioid and heroin abuse, and several pilot programs. But it just really doesn't go far enough. But what I can say is that it is a step in the right direction, and we need to be aware of what's happening. It's House Resolution 5682. It's currently pending in the United States Senate. I want to give you some of the provisions that it would provide for, as far as some of the miscellaneous provisions. So particularly if people would go through these recidivist reduction programs, they will receive more phone visitation and visitation privileges. It says here, a prisoner who successfully participates in evidence-based recidivist programs shall receive phone privileges and, if available, video conferencing privileges for up to 30 minutes per day or 510 minutes per month, and additional time for visitation at the prison. The potential for transfer closer to release residents if there's bed space, and depending on the prisoner's security designation and the recommendation of the warden. Additional policies, they may be increased on commissary limits and product offering, extended opportunities to access email, and consideration for transfer to preferred housing units, and incentives solicited from the prisoners to determine appropriate by the director. They may in fact get time credit depending on their the grade they get in this evidence-based recidivist reduction program. The prisoner shall earn 10 days of time credit for every 30 days of successful participation in evidence-based recidivism program, and the prisoner, as determined by the Bureau of Prisons, to be a minimum or low risk of recidivizing for 2 consecutive assessments and then they will have an additional 5 days credit for every 30 days. So it does have some incentives in here to reduce recidivists and reduce some time, but it only applies to a certain category of prisoners. And of course, it does not apply to the serious violent offenders, any individual that's been convicted of any assault to commit murder, racketeering, relating to biological weapons, chemical weapons, relating to congressional cabinet assassination of a Supreme Court justice or kidnapping, gathering or transmitting or losing defense information, any type of work with a foreign government. The serious felonies would not apply to this. Robbery, theft of a motor vehicle, sabotage, sexual abuse, selling or buying children, sexual exploitation of a child, terrorism, torture, treason, and recruitment of use of child soldiers, and violation of the Atomic Energy Act. So basically, and this is one of the important ones, any violation of the Immigration and Nationality Act of a removed alien would not be allowed to use this attempt to reduce prison incentives. There will be a risk assessment and level adjustment depending on the completion of the recidivism reduction program, and there may be other incentives as based on the facility. They can also add penalties. The Bureau of Prisons shall develop guidelines for the reduction and rewards incentives earned under that subsection for prisoners who violate prison rules. So basically, it's an evidence-based attempt to recidivize individuals who are currently in custody, but it just does not go far enough. But what I want people to understand is there's a definite need on a federal level to have real prison reform, real criminal justice reform. But you also need to know that 80% of the people that are in custody because of the criminal justice system are in state facilities, not federal facilities. So we really have to have this conversation on a state level. We have had that conversation here in Georgia. It needs to continue. But on the federal level, we need to know that this bill is out there. Currently, it's being held up in the Senate by Senate Republicans who currently have the majority. It needs 60 votes to pass. It is a good first step. There needs to be even more. But considering that they have not even taken up the issue of criminal justice reform in a serious manner, in a bipartisan manner, it is a good step. And I want people to be aware that this is pending. They can take it up this month and do some real movement, as we still have some work days left. I know it's, of course, a national day of mourning today, but when they get back. So what we need you to do is to contact your senator and tell them to take a long, hard look at the First Step Act, which is House Resolution 5682. I will also put in the comment section access to the petition to petition your senator to vote yes on House Resolution 5682 as a first step. But this is what it means to hold your elected officials accountable, because when we have issues that are very important to communities of color and minority communities and poor communities, who are the ones most affected by the criminal justice system and, of course, the prison system, we need to actually have real movement. So this is Attorney Griggs, a Justice Fighter. I want to bring this information to you because, like we said before, it goes beyond just going to the polls and voting. It's about holding your elected officials accountable. This is an opportunity to hold them accountable. So please help us get the message out on House Resolution